anyhow, so I see a lot of familiar faces in here in Monkz. Thank you for showing up. I know this is kind of earlier than our normal little get together, but we're over here speaking with our friends at Suku. And a lot of people from our community have kind of joined recently and are kind of wondering, what's kind of happening behind the scenes and who are Monkz and, what do they have to do in relationship to Suku and all the things that are happening in the background there. But I'll just kind of start off. I know a few of you guys have already heard my background, but this is for all of the people that are a part of the Suku community. And, hopefully you guys get a little understanding of who Monkz are, what we're doing, what we're trying to build, and the community that we've been kind of cultivating over the last 6 months, actually. Just a few days ago marked our 6-month anniversary since our mint, which is a very exciting time for us. But let's see here. I see Thomas had to drop, probably had to come back on. Let's see if we can invite Mr. Thomas to come up and speak. I don't know if we have to do that. It's his server, so we'll see. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm here with our community manager, actually, Mr. Staggs afloat. Staggs, say hello.
Hey guys, how you going? Nice to be
here.
here.
He's joining us kind of late in the evening for his time. It's like 2 a.m. in Thailand where he is, but this is one of the exciting and kind of unique things that you get from being in Web3 is you get to work with people that are basically all over the world. And one of the things that's so prolific in this community is the relationships that you gain, which a lot of these people here in this chat I have personal relationships with. So I always look at this as a net positive. Partnering with other communities and being a part of the greater good is really one of the things that we strive to do, and by any means possible. So, I guess I'll just tell a little bit of my story about how I got into Web3 and, how this all came to be. And hopefully that'll kind of give us a little bit of an inspiring path forward to how we work together and kind of how these relationships work. But I started off early in finance and was in the mortgage brokering business. I actually started off first doing cold calls for a buddy. And then I went into becoming a loan officer, then a broker, then a lender by the time I was 25. And I was doing about $500 million a year in mortgage loans. So I was completely taken by the mortgage market at the time, which was really hot. This is going in from 2002 to 2005, 2006. But then we started to see the rapid decline. And kind of funny enough, I remember where I was when Bear Stearns collapsed. I was sitting on a hotel bedroom watching the news in St. Petersburg, Florida, because I was a mortgage lender out there. And I watched $12 billion basically just evaporate off the map. And so I knew that was going to be a life-changing moment, that I had witnessed something kind of spectacular, but at the same time, somewhat terrifying. And so my business was completely impacted by it. And I was a young person. I was doing very well. I had taken advantage of the market at the time. And I just kind of watched it all end. And so being so involved in the finance end of things, the one thing that I was really enthused by was information about people's identities. And so I got very, very deep into credit bureaus. I started working on systems for Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They used to have this conglomerate system called the EMIT system, which was their electronic mitigation system, which used to handle all the disputes. So I started working for credit bureaus pretty early on, decided that I wanted to become an engineer. I didn't go to college for it, but I actually just bought books and taught myself how to become a programmer, and then worked my way through a couple various jobs doing marketing, but fell in love with natural language processing and then a very particular type of data architecture called ontological web modeling. And that's kind of a interesting little story in itself, which allows you to basically describe any kind of activity that happens in the natural known universe, but search engines use it all the time to do structured data on web pages, right? So I was kind of at the forefront of learning how to do all this, and watching how search engines were building these very, very uh, I would say intent-driven models that would allow them to rank content, right? And a large part of how content got ranked was by how it was linked together and by the quality and authority of sources pointing to it, which later became known as like search engine optimization. So I fell into that pretty early on and got hired by a couple startups to build search engine optimization models that would do all kinds of things. And at one point, we were managing like something like 35,000 websites for different big brands, and it was a really exciting time. But at the same time, it was kind of like a cheesy business to be in. So I focused on the data science side of it, and was making pretty good money. But I decided I wanted to go into really kind of the more data driven approach to how all of this worked, rather than the marketing side of it. And I later went to work for a company called Eco, which was working on different kinds of different products for really, really big brands. It all had to do with news aggregation. And from there, kind of sprawled out into managing a couple of larger projects. By this time, I was like maybe 29 or 30 years old, but I got hired to run a company to come in and basically take over the engineering department for a small startup in Hollywood called Speaker. And I had met the CEO of Speaker a long time ago. He was this really just glowing personality. His name was Marco Hansel. And he allowed me to take over the whole engineering department. And in the years that I was there, we turned it into a monster. We had $60 million worth of advertising sales. Plus, I was aggregating the entire populations of the United States social media profiles basically daily, which would allow us to see all of the interactions, comments, likes, dislikes of every piece of content that every American was putting out every single day. And this model was used by a lot of different, three-letter agencies that we had worked with. A lot of stuff that we did was preemptive, but basically we were modeling entire social networks to be used by Fortune 500s. And so I fell off because of all the craziness that was happening, and I dove into Web3 pretty hard because I remember when Bitcoin was first launched and hearing about it on Max Kaiser shows on RT when the mortgage crisis was happening, and just thinking like, oh my God, like decentralized money sounds kind of dumb, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if it's something where you can see all the activity, but you don't know who's doing it, well, that solves a lot of real world use cases that, fraudsters wouldn't like. And then I started thinking about the applicability of it from other things. And if you look at Hal Finney, who was one of the original Bitcoin contributors, writes about playing cards and trading cards being, these non-fungible, real-world owned assets that could be used, and that kind of struck a chord originally too, because when I was younger, I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering, like a lot, and I would collect cards like crazy. I played Warhammer, which is like a tabletop game, just kind of falls into the same group of people. But I just remember thinking like, oh, that's my community. Those are people that I relate to. I remember some of my best friends were, basically me and all of my best friends in middle school. That's all we did, right? Was that type of stuff. And this before video games were, as great as they are now. But you go spend the night at a friend's house, play Magic the Gathering, or do Dungeons and Dragons, or play Warhammer all night. Like that's what we used to do, right? So all of a sudden, I realized how powerful that was, and all of the emergence of these economies that were coming out, like three-dimensional printing, right? All the crazy things that would spawn out of this, that would allow us to build these real, like truly interactive, globally interactive games where you can compete and work with people all over the world. So, and also just what it did for markets in general. So anyhow, long story short, one of the things that I did that kind of put me on the map was the same way that I used to map social networks. I started mapping out Ethereum, and we started mapping Ethereum wallets basically in graphs the same way that we would social networks. Because if you think about it, every transaction on a blockchain is actually an interaction with you, another person, or another product, right? So that is a social interaction. And so what we found out is that blockchains are social networks of value. And if we could describe all of these interactions, then we would understand and be able to personify all of the activity that happened on chain and use that information to basically, work with high frequency trading funds or who else to basically understand all of the activity in real time. And this is never, to be as transparent as you are with blockchains, this is stuff that's never been done. So one of the things that I did early on was I found all of the early ICO contracts that happened during the 2017 ICO boom. And I started following all the early investors and token, distributions of those contracts. And I did it in mass. So I'm looking at thousands of contracts, right? And so if I took a look at all of the biggest projects or the most successful projects, I would always find the same wallets making early deposits and token withdrawals from those wallets. And so naturally, you create what's called a heuristic, right? And my heuristic for that type of activity was venture capital. These wallets look like they do venture capital, right? And so in that, I would just start to tag and personify all of the wallets that did that. And I would create a list of venture capital wallets that I could follow. And I could classify how successful projects were based on who their early investors were. And when I say projects, it's really just understanding, who's involved in the projects early on and how well they're communicating it to other investors. So we decided to build a business off of this. And we had a couple very, very successful use cases right out of the gate. We had one that we followed into arbitrage wallets that were doing arbitrage between like the EOS contract and exchanges. And we made, an absolute fortune following it because it ended up being one of the primary market makers for the entire DeFi ecosystem. But that company itself went on to become basically the backbone for a lot of high frequency trading firms, analytical decision modeling here in America. And we worked with some of the biggest firms and exchanges in the world in order to do this, because if you think about it from a finance perspective, there's no such thing as high frequency trading that can happen on a blockchain. Blockchains are actually slow, right? Compared to the types of transactions that happen in financial markets today, where things are boiled down to picoseconds. Here in blockchains, it could take minutes, right? Which is ridiculous. It's many, many lifetimes in high frequency trading. So what you have to do is you have to be able to execute pre-block or in the mempool, which means you have to have access to all the transactions that are submitted to the mempools for different chains. And you have to be able to make deterministic decisions, which include having to price those assets, having to find out where it came from, seeing if those wallets are new or if they have any kind of pre-existing activity that may make them seem questionable. All of that has to happen within seconds of the actual transaction being emitted. And here's the catch. You don't know necessarily where it's going to come from because it's a decentralized network, right? So you have to have nodes listening all over the world in order to catch these things. So we worked at an extremely high level with basically the brightest minds in all of finance. I mean, I was at the quant desk of pretty much every large high frequency trading firm in America. If I wasn't talking directly to their head quantitative trading analyst or their head of trade, I was working with teams directly underneath them that were working inside of their decentralized finance markets. So what we found, we find all kinds of amazing things all over the place, but really what was most inspiring was the adoption of the first part, which basically everybody knew was going to happen. It would be decentralized finance. The biggest case for decentralization was that we hold and save and earn money. And so naturally it would be the first thing that kind of happened, right? So now what we're starting to see and where we're at in this point of development is really the adoption side. And someone once told me at a conference, which is probably the most valid thing I've heard to date, about why NFTs are so important and what the role is of NFTs, right? Well, NFTs just inspired a whole younger generation to become enthusiasts of decentralized networks, right? It is an easy way for them to adopt something that they're already familiar with and apply it to these types of markets that have never existed before. And what we're seeing now is its natural evolution into more structured types of organizations, DAOs, for example, right? Even though DAOs have been around for a while, effective DAOs have not. There's only been a few truly effective DAOs. And some of them seem like they're effective too, don't get me wrong, but they have yet to really, if they're just like giving out DAO tokens and handing out DAO tokens, then it's probably not the most helpful. Sorry, can we answer some questions too? Thomas, I don't know if you can hear me. We've got some people asking questions. And I don't know if we have a questions channel, but let's see here. Can we invite people to talk? Let me see.
I think we've got
invite.
access.
Yeah. I don't. Anyways, I'll see if we can actually, if you raise your hand and have a question, I'll see if I can get you up here, and more than happy to answer questions. Hopefully you guys take this as an interactive call too, because I'm just kind of conjecture. Yeah, just kind of totally just talking off the cuff here. But so where was I? I think I was talking about proliferation of tokens, right? So one thing led to another. I've been working heavily in decentralized markets, helping large exchanges and big I would say not big companies, but actually like big investors in the space try to understand how to bridge traditional finance with decentralized finance, right? And it's kind of weird how this all played out. So I have friends who reached out to me about NFTs, and I had already been a part of launching many, many NFT projects in the past, and especially just kind of doing the back end of it all, right? But I really wanted to build a game that had some kind of decentralized element to it, where really the control of the game was just completely up to the community. It wasn't, it wouldn't be like a fully, cohorted organization like the Blizzards of the world, but rather this would be a community kind of dictating what they wanted and then building that based on who is willing to put in the work and make it a reality. And so, believe it or not, it was kind of a litmus test at first that we weren't sure how it was going to play out. But, like most good things, we wanted to give it the good old college try and make sure that whatever we did as an endeavor was really kind of community focused and community driven. I mean, there's a whole reason why we were doing this, by the way. And it has to come from, really trying to find the most effective people in an organization is by letting them kind of boil up through the surface itself. There's a whole philosophy behind it, but we don't have to get into that. So anyhow, at the end of last year, we knew that the NFT craze was, mostly based on hype, which was fine, but a lot of valid use cases and a lot of really good communities would come out of this NFT hype, right? So how do you structure yourself, and how do you structure a community of people that are relatively new to crypto into a position where first they weren't going to, at all feel like they were going to get rugged by a community, right? That's the number one thing. Like, people are sitting here actually doing work, and if we were completely anonymous about who we were and what we were trying to do was just kind of like, if we just pointed people strictly to a roadmap and had no involvement whatsoever, it would be a failure, right? Secondly, trying to get people to actually do things rather than just wait idly by for things to happen. Participation was going to be key, because what naturally happens in crypto is what we call a reflexive rebound, which means it'll pop off really hot and then it'll drop off really, really cold. And, we saw that, obviously. We've been seeing high volatility and crazy amounts of record down days in a row, just as of recent, right? So how do you stick around and not spend all this money that it takes to build a game, and only produce what maybe a fraction of the people want, right? How do you not produce something that is just fractionalized based on the decision makers, right? It was really the community that picked the direction that things went in and kind of steered, the path of where development was. And so when we set off, that was basically the mission. And we wanted to reach out to our community and say, look, like, we're not going to touch any of this as soon as we have something to show for it. Yep, there you are. Can you hear us? Thomas.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what the heck happened.
Yeah, no worries, dude.
So now
Hopefully you've
I'm
been able
using
to.
push to talk. I, I've been listening the whole time, and yeah, very fascinating what you're saying. I just I couldn't. The push to talk wouldn't work. I couldn't hook up on my PC, so now apparently it's working.
Hey, we're all good. I mean, do we want to fall into some more general questions? Because I'm just running off the cuff. And did
I
you?
love to hear you run off the cuff, but I'd be happy to ask some questions.
Oh yeah. Just real quick, I'll just wrap up the Monkz, how we came to be, and then yeah, let's talk about things forward.
Perfect.
So what we did was we went out and we spent $0 on marketing really, and we just reached out to the people that we knew who had successful NFT projects and said, hey, we're thinking about doing something. You know, it's going to be more than anything. It's going to take a long time to build, but we want it to happen organically, and we wanted to build something that was really, really like a long-term vision. And so they helped us. They supported us. They put us in front of communities, and this is how we came to be. We had a very successful mint, even though our mint wasn't large. Our volume is still consistent, and we've been chugging along as a community. We meet every single Monday and review our agenda. And then we've got about 15 different communities that are sub communities that are all building and working on their own projects, which is very, very exciting time for us. So anyhow, that's how we came to be. That's the story of Monkz really, and how this community started. So yeah, Thomas,
Great.
pleasure to finally get
Yeah.
a
Thank
get
you for holding it down until I could figure this thing out. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's why we do this, right? We always
Yeah,
practice.
absolutely. So yeah, that was one of my major questions is what how you guys got started, but also what was the inspiration behind the collection, behind some of the different traits, and what how did you guys pick your style, or how did that come to be?
So I wanted to build a futuristic game, and they wanted to build something that was, when I say they, it's our other two founders, that was more like ancient or even more like modern games today. So when we talked, we wanted to have basically the ability to host it in any kind of era, right? So what we did was our friend Josh, one of our founders, was really, I mean, he used to own a print canvas company, which was actually the largest print canvas company in the world that was doing social media. You know, they were born out of social media. I'm sure there's larger ones, but they own the social media marketing space for it, called Canvas Cultures. And he had hundreds of artists that had worked for him in the past. And he had this one kid out of Chicago named Malachi who had done stuff for Snoop Dogg. And he had recently done one of Snoop Dogg's albums. And he put together some clips for us. And I knew that I could build a generative NFT off of that. And so we set out with his artwork, and then a couple of my engineers who are I have to say they are some of the best engineers in the world, because we were working on this stuff for some of the biggest funds in the world, helped me develop and build a contract that was very unique to crypto NFT project contracts. And it, to go into the specifics, it allows us to basically mint items on and off of characters, so that those items can be traded. It's almost like if you look at EtherOrcs, you have something that's somewhat similar, but the way that we built our contract allows us to deploy any kind of characters on the contract in any number of items. It's really, I believe, 10 to the power of 256 is the number of items that we can actually fit on there. So it's quite, a lot of people have taken interest in it. A lot of big brands are actually using this contract now for their mints because of the flexibility and scalability of it. So there's a whole other tangent about what we wanted to do with productizing Monkz. But yeah, so we set out knowing that every piece of this business was going to be not really just scrutinized, but if we were going to build a really good contract, that would be copied. So we might as well try to make it a product, right? Like try to productize the contract that Monkz has. And there's a whole bunch of special things that go on behind the scenes there. We're working currently with Splinterlands, which is the largest play-to-earn game in the world, who will be launching NFTs on a similar contract. So, yeah, and it was about really just trying to create value rather than always doing what a lot of NFT projects do, which is try to extract value, right? So, yeah, there's a whole basis of what Monkz does too, which is education, which was another piece that I'll just touch on real quick. We do a ton of education. I believe we've got over 80 hours of just recorded content up on our YouTube. But for the most part, we'll break down every week and do 2 or 3 hours of education, whether it's project management or learning new types of financial products or financial markets, or just learning crypto in general, NFTs, any of that stuff. But there's not a single day that doesn't go by in the Monkz server that we don't have some kind of training or education going on.
Right, and that's a key part of your utility too. Is people having access to that. I imagine. The one thing I don't know much about from the Monkz is how your DAO structure works, and I honestly I haven't dove too deeply into DAOs in general, so I'm very interested to know more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our initial DAO holdings, which is right now reserved for the launch of our DAO. And so we basically, what we tell everybody, and what's kind of like the very vanilla truth of it, is it's just a gamified version of the Moloch DAO because of how simple the Moloch DAO works and how it's kind of the basis for a lot of the DAOs that are out there right now. All we did was we created a contract that sums up results from activity that happens and basically renders truth or false, basically a true or false method to propositions. So it's very simple. Every single character that is in Monkz has metadata that specifies its attack, its defense, and the items that are put onto those characters can add or basically modify those values and make them stronger, make them more dangerous or more effective. And so you, as a member of the DAO, use your Monkz to basically help compete for control of the DAO. And with the weapons and armor, you can modify your characters to be more powerful and more effective. And so the psychology behind this is, and if you think about it, it's very interesting, right? Well, actually, there's a lot that goes behind it. If you want to get technical, it's called the tragedy of the commons and the anti-commons, which is basically referenced directly on the Moloch DAO website, which says in DAOs, there's a problem where you either have a lot of people that are doing nothing and contributing nothing, but extracting value from the DAO, or you have just a couple people who are doing all the work and feel like they deserve all of the reward of the DAO. Right. So how do you get rid of that problem? Well, a lot of people are trying to solve that through code. We don't have to worry about that because we're a game. So it doesn't matter. The whole idea is to compete. Right. So having a competitive system is very natural to the world of how it works. Right. So competing for control in an environment where, your involvement is also based on how much you have at stake or how much you've invested into doing that. Creates a rather unique playing field, because if you didn't think it was worth it, you wouldn't be competing for it. And that kind of eliminates that whole purpose. It's really just a natural selective process, right? It's very human. It's very ornate. And mind you, this idea has been around for a long time. It's not like this is completely revolutionary. It's actually very well documented that, when there's natural survival instincts that have to kick in, people just become default aggressive. That's it. And it works in a DAO structure. It keeps the people who are involved working. It also keeps them motivated and applied. So naturally, I think that a lot of organizations, and I'm not saying that we're going to be the first by any means either, but this model will work, right? Because you are competing with how much you have invested in it. If it meant more to you, you would put more into it, right? So, and if it was more to everybody else, it becomes more valuable. Does that leave lesser value players out? No, because there's highly specialized roles inside of this system that give all kinds of opportunity. And the idea behind these communities anyways is to be opportunistic, right? I don't know many DAOs that aren't structured to be that way, but I'm assuming that that's just a natural progression in business evolution. So exciting to see that kind of happen as well. Yeah, sorry, Thomas, do you have any more questions on that general topic? I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole unless you really want me to. Did we lose you again? That's all right. Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm just, going off the cuff here, but I've got plenty of time left to talk. And okay, can we invite people up? Because I see iParse. There we go. Hey, can you hear us? Can you talk? You may have to push the talk on.
Let's see. I can hear you.
Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
hey, yeah. There you are. Loud and clear.
Hey, what's happening, guys? I just had a quick
Hey.
question for you. Because you mentioned that you guys early, or maybe even right now, do have partner perhaps with either some other NFT projects or whatever. I'm just curious, what, for example, do you look for when you want to partner with a community? I'm just curious in that sense.
So usually the primary litmus test is really activity. Are they active still? Do they do things with their community still? Because if they're not active, then it usually means that there's nobody cares. There's no involvement, right?
Gotcha.
If they haven't done anything in months and months and months, usually that's one of the first things that is. And I'm talking mostly with NFT communities.
Yeah.
It means that they're probably just nothing's going to happen. They're just waiting for everybody to forget who they are, right? That's it.
Makes sense.
And we've already seen a lot of those companies or those communities fall off by the wayside, right? Also, is it always an extraction of value? Are they constantly doing new mints to raise money from their community? If they are, then what's the purpose of it? And was it part of the original game plan, right? Are they? How are they surviving? Are they constantly spending money and then having to take in more money? Was this all part of the program? Because I'll tell you right now that a lot of communities that promise to put out traditional games had no idea how expensive it is to build a game or how expensive it is to service a community, and really underestimated how expensive it is to do both of those at the same time, right? Like most game developers don't have to service a community while they're building a game, which is terribly frustrating for people who are not, who don't understand how this works, and they don't understand how expensive it is to do both of those things. So, you'll see all kinds of weird things happen in the interim. You'll see their NFT prices drop, or you'll see a lot of angry community members, or lowered expectations constantly. So it's tough, right? The last thing would be, I guess, and it's not necessarily the last thing, but it's a lot easier to judge those other things when you can just turn around and say, from a retrospective, how on point have they been with brand, and what are they trying to do? Almost all the time it's the same spiel. We're building a game, our token's going to be used by our game, and that's it, right? And it's like, oh, it's supposed to be a self-sustaining economy, right? But it doesn't really work that way. You have to have interest. You have to have a lot of different things powering that.
Absolutely makes sense. I appreciate the response. One last question before we go that kind of morphs into two, and I mean you can describe it as you want. First one being, what if you had one takeaway that you'd want everybody to walk away with from the spaces, being here on the stage, what would it be? And do you plan, like kind of riding off of what you just said, do you plan on having any more mints for crypto months later on down the road?
Absolutely. So, okay. So to answer the first part of that question, well, actually, let me answer the second part with mints for crypto Monkz. We don't have the Monkz are minted. Like, we minted them all. If we do additional characters, it's because our contract allows us to bring in other communities into Monkz. So what would happen is we would basically work with a community. look at their metadata, and allow them to bring their characters to join us in Ascension. And we're almost to a point where we'll start doing that here pretty soon. But like I said, our contract, if you look at how the Monkz contract is built, it's built out to work as a PFP for gaming, right? So it's very unique. And we do have partnerships, like I said, with some very, very large companies that are using it to launch their Ethereum versions of their PFPs. So it's a very exciting time. Now, sorry, the first question was more focused on, sorry, what was the first question again?
Oh, it was basically if you could have people walk away with one key takeaway from this, what would it be?
Well, first off, the reason that we also chose gaming is because there's 80% of people who are just not going to understand the underlying mechanics, but they're familiar with gaming. So that was easy for us to relate to a larger audience by doing that. 80% more people just by doing that, right? So it is a game, and it's meant to be a game where we compete for control. But I would say ultimately the goal of Monkz is to actually make more people live in a Web3 universe. We were talking about this when I first hopped on, about how our community manager lives in Thailand. I'm in Southern California, and the rest of my team is all over the world. And wherever we work, it doesn't matter where we are, we all work together, and we're building something out of nothing that never existed. So every single day that we're adding to this, it's literally uncharted territory. Nobody else in the world has had to do what we've had to do. Mind you, there are other communities doing very similar things. We're all kind of on our own expeditions here, figuring this out as we go along. And to be honest, as far as the talent goes and the opportunities, we've been teaching people at Monkz how to take advantage of this and simple ways to get into Web3. So at the end of the day, the simple answer is to bring more people into Web3. That's it, right? How we do it, I think, is first going to have to start out by making people valuable to the space, by giving them skills and applying their talents to things that they work on. And then just allowing them to take ownership in that, helping them start their own things, helping them make money, helping them build their own products and being a part of it, right? And being able to work with people that are trying to do similar things to you. So I look forward to that. I think it's, like I said, that's a long-term vision. That's something that's going to take a long time to do. But I look forward to it because I know how
some great
valuable
answers, man. Appreciate the insight.
Yeah. Leaf, what's going on? You're an admin too.
Hey.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Hey, it's Alejo.
that's okay. That's okay. I know I'm not Alejo. I'm Andres. I'm part of the community team. Yeah, guys. I heard, I listen to everything. It's great what you people are doing. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Which tool are you guys using to build an entire ecosystem of CryptoMonks? Like,
That's a
you
good
say
one.
that you want to bring more people to Web3. It's like the Suku world. We have that vision too about bring more people in Web3. But what tools do you think that are the right ones to bring more people in the Web3 to build your ecosystem?
So I'll give you a story with that answer real quick, right? The name of my faction inside of CryptoMonks is called Shuhari. Shuhari is a principle that I took. I named the faction after a principle of agile development and agile project management. If anybody in here is a project manager and is familiar with agile or has ever been on a software team and has had to do Scrum, then you're familiar with these principles, right? So our whole entire process has really been self-organizing. Through necessity, people have boiled to the surface and started taking on responsibility for things that they probably never thought that they would do. You know what I mean? So I think you kind of adapt and become the community that you choose to affiliate with. All right. And that, to be honest, is a very rinse and repeat process that happens psychologically behind the scenes. And so as far as getting more people into Web3 and how that matters, I'll give you an example through this story, right? We spend a few hours every single week teaching people how to do project management for software. Why? Because if you're going to have a bunch of people building stuff in a community, you need a bunch of people that understand how to manage projects the same way. They all speak the same language. They all have the same terminology. They all mean the same things. So we've been doing that. And to be honest, like 15, 20, 30, maybe 35 people will show up. And that's something that they get to add to their resume, and it doesn't cost them anything. In fact, most of the time we do it publicly, so you don't even have to be a monk in order to join. Why do we do that? Well, in the real world, I'm a software engineer, and I manage a huge engineering gig where we have over like 140 engineers right now, I think, we manage. And we are in dire lack of qualified project managers that have real world experience. And if you have real world experience in Web3, you get a premium for those kinds of things right now. So if I can teach it, why not just give that to everybody that's been a part of our community? Because we could use that ourselves. That's something that we can all utilize and would make our organization as a whole move much faster, right? So I think, that's our process of getting more people into Web3. Suku has a very similar process, right? You guys are supporting the fundamental communities that are behind this, right? You guys have relationships with communities like Monkz, where we're trying to integrate our economies together to make it valuable. And you guys bring to the table Infinite and a bunch of other sub companies and organizations that we're trying to build relationships with, build product with, through this weave of all of these other communities that are out there, using our relationships and the Suku brands to try to encapsulate all the value that's there. Because think about it, when the market is down and the market is suffering, that is the best time to build. It's hard to be active and hard to be positive all the time when the market's making it difficult for you. So a lot of these communities have suffered on those fronts. Well, hence comes in, communities like us, communities like Suku, some other big communities that have, figured out how to make positive economies in gaming, right? And just bringing them to the forefront and allowing that natural progression in these free market economies to work, right? They don't get government stimulus here. It really is the best performers are the ones that survive. So I think that natural process is going to take shape, and we're already seeing it happen, and it's literally been unfolding in front of our eyes every day. So it's I would say it's an exciting revelation.
Can you guys hear me again now? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you are.
I don't know if you noticed, but I added you guys as mods in case I cut out or something. You can invite more people up to speak. But go ahead.
No worries.
I didn't want to cut you off, Andres.
That's okay. I just want to say that it's awesome that other projects things like us, because I think this is a way, like build real community, not just build in bullish market. Just you have to work, to build a real ecosystem, and alone it's very difficult. So work with other projects, make it easier,
Well, it only comes to the surface when you do a lot of these community events, right? And that's the thing. So, a lot of communities failed to realize that the consistency of communication almost has to be daily in order for it to work in a down market like this, because people have money at risk. People are, they're doing things, right? They're invested in things. And I will tell you one thing that I've learned from working at high frequency trading funds that these guys taught me. And I love this point. When you're about to make a risky decision and you have all of the cards on your table, you're going to make much more sound decisions about how much risk you're willing to take and what's at stake. You have an opportunity to think about it. All right. But when you take the cards off the table and you apply it to something, your decision making is going to be much more volatile. So don't trust yourself when you're making those decisions. Trust yourself when you are making, trust yourself when you're making the decisions. Don't trust yourself if you question your rationality at the time, right? And what's currently happening. You should have thought about it beforehand, right? So if you allow things to play out, it usually ends up being the best decision that you could make. Secondly, what's happening now, especially with NFT communities, this is where a company like Suku comes in, and it is like a land grab, right? Holding off and waiting for everything to kind of settle is probably one of the best decisions and one of the smartest moves that could have happened, because you're not paying a premium for everything. And now the real utility of these types of things starts to take a hold, right? You know how many? So there was 83,000 projects that launched on OpenSea. All right. Do you know how many of those projects promised to have games and economies tied to their tokens? So many of them, right? And they just sat there burning through everything they had. And now we're starting to see the downfall of these, 60,000, 80,000, 100,000 plus communities where there's just nothing else other than like, hey, you could stake these and get some more of these. And that's it. That's the use case. And people have figured out that that's not a use case, right? But what you have are these communities, and you have these really, really cool artists, and a lot of work that's been done, and a lot of participation, and a lot of hopes and dreams that are still, trying to figure this out, that are still working towards trying to make things happen. So now, think about it like this, right? Back in the day, there would be a Y Combinator, where everybody who wanted to build a big tech company would go there, and that's where they would start. And Y Combinator would pick and choose the best ideas and then put them in front of their investors and help them become an incubator, right? I kind of see that like what Suku is doing right now, right? Suku is going to find the best projects at a discount. They're going to say, hey, we understand the community. We know where you guys fall short. We have everything in place for branding, for brands, for development, all of this stuff. Now is the time for us to start putting stuff out, right? And so, strategically, when I started seeing how this kind of lined up, I was like, damn, these guys are doing the same thing we're doing, but are like extremely well capitalized and already have a huge community. So obviously, it'd be good to partner with someone like this to help put this stuff to work. So behind the scenes, we've been doing a lot of due diligence on projects, talking and partnering with some other, alpha groups, basically. But yeah, I think that when you look at this now and you see what's going to happen here, you realize that, this is actually where all the good things happen, right? This is where all of the consolidation of ideas, communities, groups, and really just output starts to happen. So it'll be an interesting time, obviously, and we look forward to it. But I still think we've got a long way to go. Right? There's a song. We got a long way to go in a short time to get there. Right?
Eastbound and down.
Eastbound and down. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Eastbound and down. Right.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a good one. But yeah. So yeah. Again, I hope that answers the question. I probably went on a bit of a tangent there, but it makes for a good story.
That was great. And just to touch back on what you were saying, it seems like besides there's this really small group now of solid teams and solid communities that are building and just bear market building and sustaining. And then you have a large faction, which I think is going to get washed out. And that's kind of the rinse, repeat, hype, same people that are just rinse repeating, that are just launching these projects or launching these new NFT collections with promoters and everything. And then after they mint out, they slow rug. And it sucks for really hard workers and potentially for new creators, like really talented new creators that are looking to enter the space. So I was wondering if you have advice for talented new artists, community creators looking to enter the space now at the most difficult time yet, what would you tell them?
That is a great question. Well, first off, okay, let me say it's a good question, especially from the creator aspect of it, right? If you don't have an idea, it's not hard to find people in the space that do, and they're really good ideas. Everybody kind of lacks, all of the things that are necessary to bring something to fruition, or they just don't know how to do it, right? But being a part of these communities, I swear you will learn how to do things that you never thought possible, especially if the community is putting out stuff. And in doing so, you should also be able to work with people in that community to work different angles of it, right? And to help you bring your ideas, or you can help someone else bring their ideas to fruition. And if you have a good community, they'll support you and they'll get behind you and they'll work with you to build a better product and to build a better mission, or to build, just whatever it is that you need. Having support of a large group behind you that are all kind of focused on the same thing, morally and financially, like, do it and don't let it hold you back. The opportunity, the amount of opportunity that is out there right now, 95% of everybody misses. They don't see it. They see maybe a few things that have been rinse and repeat, like the NFT market, right? They don't realize the underlying value there, which is really the momentum and the things that need to happen in order for that momentum to keep moving. So there's, every day there's something that happens or something that we learn as a collective that you sit here, and if you really understand what's happening and you really understand the fundamental shift, you realize that there's opportunity everywhere. All right. I mean, everywhere. Even being a Discord mod now can pay a really, really good amount, right? Like doing these types of things, you can make a living doing this stuff, right? So, like I said, don't be discouraged by the market. It doesn't mean anything in the long run. It doesn't mean shit, right? The opportunity is there. Every large financial institution that I've ever had the opportunity to work with is contacting me because of blockchain and because of crypto and because of all the things that are happening. So just stay inspired. Don't, this is always going to be a net positive, and we need to treat it like that. And we need to forget about all the shortcomings that happen till we get there.
Excellent advice. Yeah. We are running low on time. I have another question, but if there's more people from the community that want to talk or have anything to ask, please do.
I think fire away, Thomas. I think we'll be good. I know a lot of these people down here.
Awesome.
I've heard my story before.
So this was just my last one, based off your experience and your expertise in the market. If you could envision something that takes us, I mean, we had, the great DeFi summer in 2020, and then leading into NFTs and the explosion of the metaverse going into 2022 out of 2021. If you saw one trend that was going to carry us into the next exciting phase, what would that be?
To be honest, this is actually a really easy one for me to answer because I've been witness to it. It is people figuring out how to stay in this business, regardless if it means they can't sell NFTs anymore to make a profit. They'll go get a job in the space that allows them to continue doing this. It's a black hole, man. It just is. Once you're in it and you're working in it, you don't want to leave it. And everything just ends up going this way because of all of the experience that comes with it. It's not even the money. It's not even the profit or the loss or the extreme emotion that you feel being in the space. It's the fact that people are willing to work for it. matters the world to me. So anyways, yeah. And to me, that's the test. I mean, that in itself is the fucking testament. Nobody can tell me otherwise. Like, I'll preach that to the high heavens right now. So
Sure. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you guys so much for joining us tonight or today, if depending on where you are. I'm sorry for my technical issues early on. I'm gonna work hard on that to make sure next time around it doesn't happen again. But you pretty much carried it. You nailed all my questions early on before I even was able to get on the chat. So really, thank you guys.
No worries, man. I love it. I would love to do this more often. I love talking with you guys, Thomas, and everybody else that's on the team. Let me know if you want us back here. I would love to continue doing this and supporting each other as we kind of go through this. So appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate you.
All right. Take care, y'all.
You too.